So we'll go ahead and get ready here, get started here, just so we get started on time. This class is Altitude, Enhancing Displays with Lifts, Towers, and Platforms. My name is Donnie Toms. I have been scripting Pyro musicals now for roughly about 5 years. As many people got started as a kid in the backyard shooting fireworks in the Midwest, where that was the way of life when the season came around. That's what you did, and that's where I kind of got hooked on it. And when you get older and you get into big boy dollars and your own money, you start doing bigger and better things and having more fun with it. And went down the rabbit hole of Pyro musicals, and then went down, as you can see here, to the rabbit hole of lifts and competing in the Pro Division of Sky Wars in 2023 as a member of KCAP. Joined KCAP in 2020 and immediately learned a ton of stuff and information there, and a lot of support from that club comes into be able to do lifts and platforms and things like that, because that's not stuff you can do on your own. I'm also, as David mentioned, if you were in David's class, co-host of the Pyro Unleashed podcast. We do weekly podcasts. We talk a lot about show designs and scripting, and then we also have a lot of people in the industry on the podcast as well. So if you're interested in stuff like that, feel free to check us out, YouTube. We have a video podcast as well as all the other streaming platforms. You want just the audio version of it. Get here into today's kind of agenda here for you. No particular order. This will fluctuate probably. We'll talk about when to elevate your fireworks up in the air. There are cases when you would and wouldn't want to. Things to consider for spacing and your height requirements. A lot of people just want to put a tower up in the air, but they don't consider a lot of different heights and how far fireworks go. Different types of lifts, towers, and platforms. There's a lot of different variations out there, a lot of different ways to lift your stuff up, and might surprise people to see some of the methods. How to build a 360-degree rack and then raise it up. We'll go over that. The different types of 360-degree racks. There are variations out there as well. We got the funky chord. There we go. And how to script elevated positions in finale. So we'll have a couple of finale videos for you guys to see on how to actually script platforms and towers in finale. And then we'll have a little bit of Q&A. We'll probably have some Q&A in between as well, just in case you guys don't forget some questions. First thing is when to elevate fireworks. There's a lot of different scenarios when you would want to elevate. On the right side, you can see there, elevate some ground effects using just some speaker stands or music stands like that. Sometimes you don't want your flames or strobes set in the ground. Maybe you've got tall grass around. I think when you get them up off the ground a little bit, it's a little bit easier for the eyes to see them. It kind of gives that a little bit more of that height level, especially for fountains. We've got droopy fountains. You'll get a nice effect. They'll fall down a little bit farther. A great way. This method over here on the right, I would say, is a when not to elevate your fireworks. I built this monstrosity a few years ago. As you can see, there's a big berm behind it. And my fireworks set down, and when they shut off, you couldn't tell they were actually elevated. It looked like they were shooting off of the berm behind you. So this is an example where if you don't have the proper height to be able to do that, I wouldn't advise trying to do a 10-foot tower of comets and mines, because it's just not going to look how you might think it's going to look in your head. Other things when you want to elevate, right? If you want to do some full 360 effects, most common you see is boom lifts or big towers, right? If you've seen videos online, the Malta tower, right? 300-foot tower, big wheels on there, right? So that's another example. If you're wanting to shoot down in the ground, you're wanting to create those visual effects, is a great way a reason to elevate your fireworks. Some things to consider, some spacing and your height restrictions. So obviously, depending on the height of your elevated platform will dictate the pyro that you're going to use. If you're only using a shorter lift here on the right, I think there's about a 45-foot lift, you're probably not going to shoot 40 millimeter mines and comets off of that lift, because they're going to go straight in the ground, right? So if you have less height, you're going to want to use smaller caliber effects. Things like 20 millimeter, 25 millimeter are really great for those lower towers. When you see like the Malta Tower 3 foot in the air, they're shooting full-size comets out there, and they're barely even making it to the ground, right? Because they travel so far. And then obviously, the other one there is a scaffolding one that was from Sky Wars a couple years ago. As you can see there, they were shooting stuff off the sides of it. Another thing to consider, right, is how much space wide, right? So if you've got something elevated up and you need to shoot pyro off to the side, you're trying to probably avoid trees. That's another thing to kind of watch out for. Is Rob Steven likes to say comet pinball at Skywars. You know, you're shooting off into the trees, comets about, it's everywhere. So that's something to kind of consider when you're thinking about spacing. Another thing to consider would be spacing between your towers. At Skywars in 23, we had 3 lifts out there, and so we kind of sped them out evenly across the field so you had enough spacing, and our shots were still overlapping, right? So you want to kind of take that into consideration as to the effect you're trying to make. In that scenario, we wouldn't shoot all 3 of them at the same time because you'd have way too much overlap. So a lot of times we would shoot the left side, shoot the right side, you know, together maybe, and then shoot the center differently. So that way you don't have a lot of that type of overlap when in your effects. A lot of times you know off of lifts and platforms, I shoot a lot of mines. If you're shooting down, comets you can shoot up. Again, you're shooting a comet in the ground, just going to bounce off the ground. Maybe that's the effect you're going for. You want to see the comets bounce across the ground. Sometimes that, you know, but then you risk, you know, hitting other product on the ground. So that's another thing when you are raising stuff up, is making sure you don't have a lot of product maybe underneath where you're shooting down. So make sure you have that height difference. If you're shooting down into other product, you're making sure, you know, you're using stuff less, or you're shooting up, you're not hitting your tower. So some things to consider there. So as far as like when to elevate, space, height, any questions from anybody around any of that type of stuff?
If you do want to shoot down, do you have any like minimum requirements that you look at?
The tallest tower you can get, the tallest tower that your budget affords. That's really what's going to dictate a lot of your ability to shoot down. Usually if you're shooting down, you're going to use a smaller caliber mine. You know, I would stick with, you know, the 22s or even the 25 millimeter mines are sufficient. They're still going to reach the ground, but it's going to get less on the ground. You're going to see more of that effect droop. I've never really, I think, shot comets down.
So if you wanted to use a 20 millimeter mine, what's the minimum height?
I mean, my preference is at least probably like 70 feet. So that way you give you a go. And the one on the right here, this is a 45 foot, and everything shot off half of it was on the ground. So it really it didn't get that full circle effect, like a flat spot in your circle, right? So you have to kind of take into consideration a little bit, you know, how the distance of your effect, right? You can do some testing of your effects and get a rough height, and you can kind of use that to determine, you know, am I okay with, you know, the top 20 foot of my mine laying on the ground in those instances. You know, at our towers that we shot at Skywars in 23, those were 85 foot, and I shot some 20 mil comets in a full circle, and the 20 mil comets basically burned out as they were making to the ground. So that was the one rare time where I've shot a 20 mil down. And it was a 20 mil, and that was 85 feet, and it seemed like a pretty good height. All right, different types of lifts, towers, and platforms. So here, like we kind of mentioned, these are some smaller platforms. This was taken from Pyro last year. Just some regular wooden platforms with some effects on there. These work great for your flames, strobes, even gerbs work good out there. So you can lay your gerbs flat, shoot your gerbs off to the side. You can even angle your gerbs, put some little wooden blocks. I know David likes to do that with his gerbs, little 45-degree blocks on his platforms, and shoots them off. It's really a great way to kind of, you know, get your effects up off the ground just a little bit. That way you can kind of create that height. Again, a type of tower you built, this is the one from scaffolding. You know, this one here, I think this is like 45 feet. I think they built it. Again, you can shoot things off the side, you shoot things off the top. A lot of different options you can do here, especially when you're scripting something like this. I know in this particular show they did a run where they went across the field, up the tower, around the tower, and across the field the other side. And so that's kind of a unique effect that you could get off of a tower and scaffolding like this, is you could do runs like that where you go up and down and around. And then obviously you have the top. Here you have a nice, good, big platform on top. You don't really get that with a lot of towers and lifts. So sitting here, you got a really good platform on the top. You can shoot cakes off there. You can shoot slices. I wouldn't advise it, but you certainly could. I don't like personally putting slices and stuff on top of a tower because they're known to catch fire. And when your top of your lift's on fire, how are you going to put the fire out? So I always avoid putting slices and those effects on top of my towers just because they do catch fire. You don't have a way to put it out. Yeah. So it'll take you 5 or 10 minutes to bring your lift down, and then you don't know what other damage it could have done while it was up there. So I generally just use just single shots. Again, but you could certainly do that. Even on the sides of these, you could use slices probably on the sides of them. It's probably a little bit safer, especially on a scaffolding as well. Here, this one here was from Pyro Jam last year as well. This is actually some truss work in the back there. If y'all have seen any of the IPC shows, Tim Jamison loves to do truss work. That's where this came from. And so, again, it's very much similar to a tower, but a lot bigger structure, a lot wider. Gives you the opportunity to put your pyro up and down on the outsides. There was also pyro in the middle pole as well, and then all across the top in various positions. This is kind of probably an easier way to get multiple uses of tower spots, relatively easy without having to have multiple lifts out there in the field. And then this here then would be like using a boom lift for a 360. This was from a show a few years ago in Kansas City. I think it was for APA that year. The wheel on that thing was probably 8 foot across and 8 foot tall diameter. I think it was ginormous. But again, boom lifts have really kind of been the go-to for a lot of us here in the pyro, just because you can rent them. You don't have to buy them. Don't tell them you're shooting pyro off of them probably and buy the insurance. And on this one here, they actually did put a platform on top of the basket, and they were shooting some gerbs and some stuff and some mines off the sides of the top of that. That's always been for me the easiest way to go, because it's easy to lower it down, load it up, raise it up and down. You can service it nice and easily, and work on it like that. As far as this goes, anybody have any questions about different types of lifts, towers, platforms? Not generally on platform. If you're using like truss work, or maybe if you have like a lift and maybe you got the little ladder effect in the front of it, you're going to use some guy wires to help kind of keep that strafing down. But using a regular boom lift, I've never used guy wires or anything like that. Yeah, it's a scaffolding platform. Yeah, at Skywars, and they actually did have guy wires on that. They had several guy wires on it. Yeah. I think the one over there, I think it was 45. The scaffolding was, yeah. There was an OSHA limit of like 47, and they kept it at 45. Any other questions? All right, types of 360-degree racks. So there are obviously various ways to create 360s. There's a lot of different types and designs out there, so we'll kind of go over them a little bit. This here is one here that's really built in a slice fashion. So you would build that out as individual slices, and it looks like you could probably stack multiple of them together and create a really kind of a thick 360 kind of effect. There's a lot of different things. It looks like on that right there, you could probably put 4, looks like about 4 effects on each one of those all the way around. You would just basically create that and then just create multiples of them, and you could get a really thick kind of effect. Another popular one, this is the one that I've used a lot. This is actually from our Skywars show. That's using the Pyro system. If you guys are maybe familiar with Spirit of 76, they have a lot of the Pyro equipment and stuff, and so basically that is the little aluminum rails. They all form together. It takes 24 of them to make a circle. So each one of them is exactly 15 degrees all the way around, and then you can use the little plastic X holders, and then you just zip tie all your product on there. So that right there, we create a custom little center for it with a cutout for a 4x4 post. Slide it right on and off a 4x4 post, and that's how we supported it. Here is a very similar one, exactly the Pyro. This is the one that was seen earlier. This actually has a wheel attached on the front of it as an additional effect. So basically just a big bicycle wheel with some fountains zip tied around it, and so it would just create that extra effect up in the sky on the front of it. And then this is the picture of the big one you see. You can see there in scale and size of how massive that one is. That one was actually made out of wood, and it was in 2 halves. So when they brought it, it was the top half and the bottom half, and we actually watched them snap them and attach them together to make the full circle. Again, very, very customizable there. I believe those were every 5 degrees maybe, or maybe even closer. I don't remember exactly how many degrees there were on that one, but that one was pretty nice. And then another kind of variation of that one is actually made out of aluminum. And so you can see there how looks like each row there's these little aluminum troughs there, and then there's zip tying all the single shots down each line. There's also another version out there I didn't have a picture of, and a Critco, he makes one as well. That's I think it's got 12 shots on it. He actually has that here in the trade show if you're interested in that one. And it's basically the same thing as his flat Critco racks. He just has a circle version of it, the 360, and you support them upside down with your pool noodles or balls or whatever else you want to secure them. But yeah, a lot of these are zip tied options if you like zip ties. There's other options out there. We don't like, I don't like zip ties either. But any questions around different types of 360-degree racks? Yeah, good. Yeah, those are actually plywood. So I think Spirit sells the actual plastic ones, but we don't want to pay for them. So we use plywood, and then we use all thread that went all the way through with nuts, and then we use that to keep them tight. And then when you put it on the 4x4 post, you put some little L brackets between the wooden center and the 4x4 post to keep it from sliding front to back, so it doesn't try to slide off the front of it. And those, you can put multiples of those back to back. On Saturday, you will actually see out in the show on Saturday night, there is 2 of the 360s back to back that you will see suspended out there. So that will be, you'll see some pictures of that coming up here as well. So the next thing I kind of want to get into a little bit is, now that we have decided we want to do this, now it's how do you script this, right? So how do you actually make this work in Finale? And so I actually have a couple of videos that we recorded with Drew from Finale, actually going through the process of how you would do this. And I've got some other videos on some other screenshots on actually creating your custom racks and all that. So I'm going to play a couple of videos here for you guys that will kind of play here. I'm hoping this will play through the audio. Let me change my audio source real quick.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. So we'll leave these positions here for now, and let's just go ahead and drop in a new position, which will represent our wheel. So I'll just come up to positions, add, and choose one position. And it just kind of fell over here on the ground. That's fine. I think it's often the case with wheels that people kind of overthink it. They think like, I need a bunch of different positions facing different ways, or I need my position to be some way other than flat. And the reality is, like, I think the simplest way is just to have a normal position that's facing in its default way, which is sort of flat and with the arrow pointing toward the audience, which you see all of these are. We're the audience here, and the arrows are pointing toward us. And just to elevate that position. So there's multiple ways to elevate a position. If I'm looking from the crowd's perspective along the ground, and I just click and drag on a position, I grabbed the wrong one, but that drags it up, so that elevates it. So it really can be that easy. If you have a very specific height you want, or very specific coordinates, I think it's handy to be able to right click and do edit position properties. So like, for example, if I want this thing dead center, the X coordinate is the left and right, on the shoot site. So if I put 0, that's going to be dead center left to right. This is the Y coordinate, says up. So like these units are in meters. So if I want, 35 meters, if I need some amount in feet, I'll have, you'd have to convert. You can't enter feet here, but, and then this is the amount back. And that back distance is meters, of course, and it's from Origin Man. We talked about Origin Man several episodes ago. So, but, in terms of left and right and up and down, it's kind of simple. So I like to use this, and I like to enter my left, right, up, down, and back, forward coordinate right there.
So is that right position 0 based on Origin Man?
Yeah, so all these coordinates are measured from Origin Man.
Okay.
So what this means is, that's a good question, Donnie. It means that we are perfectly aligned left, right with Origin Man.
Okay.
So in this case, we're behind Origin Man 8 meters.
Yeah. So if
Okay.
your origin man isn't the center of your shoot site, you don't want to use 0 maybe if that's the case.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if correct, yeah, if your show is not centered around Origin Man or left to right centered around Origin Man, then this isn't that helpful for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that way, dragging this guy, is going to be
Yeah.
easier. Now, keep in mind, if
Yeah.
I'm dragging from the top, I'm not moving this up and down. Now I'm dragging along the sort of surface of my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My 2D screen. So here's centered on Origin Man and 30 feet behind it, right? If I go to the front and I'm dragging, then I'm kind of moving left and right here, but I'm also moving up and down. So it just depends on, where you need it to be. There is one other trick that I'll show you for moving positions around and not moving them in multiple axes at once, which is right click, move on axis, which now brings up the 3 arrows for each axis. So now if I grab this arrow, no matter which way I'm looking, no matter where my camera is, up, down, top, left, right, I can move just up and down. I can move just left and right,
Okay.
move just forward and back. And I'm not fighting, dragging dragging on a 2D screen in a 3D.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's
So
cool.
that can be really handy, especially when you're trying to, even more so if you're trying to put positions on a model or a building or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this back here and let's check our height. The ruler's not being drawn for the height right now, which isn't helping me much. But, yeah, so I can't easily see my height at the moment. So I could come and dial that in from position properties. 50 meters, maybe that's kind of high. So let's go with something like that. So that's it. I showed a few different ways, so it took some time there, but
Yeah.
it's not that difficult to elevate a position. And we didn't like flip the position over or put it on its face like a clock. Like that's all we got to do. And then we can just shoot some effects from it. And we can use, instead of using angles that avoid going past, negative 90 or 90, we can go all the way around. So for example,
Yeah.
I might, these comments have quite a long trajectory height, but you could do something like, if you're not worried about hitting the ground, then of course that doesn't matter. So I could put this in here and then kind of building on what we did last video or last episode.
Yep.
I could duplicate this into a flight and, let's say I want one every 20 degrees. So I'll have 18 of them. I'm just going to leave this as 10 so you can see what we get here. So, that's what we've got now, but check this out. So if we go up to script, angles, make into fan, and instead of normal fan, we choose circle fan and we do 360. Now Finale automatically spreads them out. So
There you
you
go.
can see like this. So notice we start at 0 and we end over here at negative 20, 20
Yeah.
degrees to the left. The reason you wouldn't do normal fan is because when you do normal fan, you get 2 at the same angle, right? So it starts and ends. Starts and
Okay.
ends. You see this first one's shooting straight down. It's going to, forgive me. I scrolled forward there. The last one's also going to fire straight down. So we've used
Gotcha.
more than one revolution on our circle if we've got a wheel rack or a circle rack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's really handy F to fan 360 and to use circle fan. That automatically spreads it out and accommodates, and it doesn't duplicate that first or last angle, right? So you get
That's
something.
cool. It's handy.
That's very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one revolution. Let's see, put in a cool effect here. Let's do some more. So maybe we'll put in some mines and I'll do duplicate into flights. And we got something like that.
Mm.
And, we'll make a sequence out of this. Let's make these. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going I don't care about sequencing. I don't care about the order. I just want to spread them out. So I'm going to use spread out evenly. And I'll put maybe 0.2. And I'll do that for these guys. H to spread out evenly, 0.2. And then, I got something like this. These ones start from the bottom. Let's fan these again to get them to start from the top. When you use circle fan, it always starts at the top.
Always starts at the top. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
So now we have both of these kind of starting at the top, but say you wanted to do something cooler where we know this is the first one to shoot, let me select just this guy here. So let's select these and let's rotate this like 120 degrees. So now I'm spinning this around like hands on a clock, and now that starts at 120. Right. So if I were to
Gotcha.
if I continue to duplicate this, let's do another one here. If we want to drag this guy specifically, right? This guy's at 120.
Yep.
So we'll drag this guy over to 120 this way. And then let's make one more. So I'm just using Control C and Control V. And this one, I'm just going to do the fan again to get it to fire from the top.
Yep.
And then let's take a look at it. There it is. And then I'm going to group this, pressing G to group, select these, group, group, group. And then let's go ahead and try making them coincident. So at the same time here, and see what we get. So that looks crazy complex. But if you build it in pieces and you put it together and you know how to use the fan tool, you can get something pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow.
And the whole grouping thing keeps it nice and clean. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, I can look at this and say, oh, I need 3 circle racks,
Yeah.
or 3 wheel racks, right?
Yeah.
Of course, this is, again, it's all about knowing your equipment. Like, you're not going to be shooting this if I did 18 shots per revolution because the math is easy. It's 20 degrees per shot, but
Yeah.
you got to go with, you definitely got to work from what your gear supports.
So kind of come back over to your question about how about the disc of it hitting the ground. It's a great way to do it if you have finale and you know the distance of your effects, and then you can put them on the wheel, run them around and get a good idea on your height, right? So if you want to, like, say, I don't want to hit the ground at all, keep raising your height up. Now you know at that point, this is the height I've got to have to keep you from hitting the ground, right? So it's a very good way to visualize. If you're using finale, it's a great way to be able to kind of play with it, visualize, see what it's going to look like, see if your height is really going to be that advantageous to it with the effect you want, or you can either tailor the effects you have to the height you're working with. So set the wheel at the height you know you're going to have it limited to, and then try to pick your effects to match the height of your platform. So, and again, this could be used on any type of 360 degree, no matter how many angles you have, right? He did one here at 20 apart. The Pyro llamas are 15 apart. You can create custom ones, every 5 degrees, right? And so that's how you would just continue to build this. It would be replicable on any 360 at all. So any questions on this part of the finale piece on what it would kind of look like scripting this in finale?
That's 150 feet in the air.
That's 150 feet. Yeah, he did that. Yeah, he did that. Yeah, well, I think he did 40. Yeah, he hit 45 meters, right? Yeah.
Where do you get something to 150 feet in the air?
You can rent boom lifts. You can rent boom lifts that are pretty close to that.
For how much?
Right? For how much?
Sometimes I'm seeing on Facebook Marketplace, like antennas.
Yeah.
Portable cell tower antenna thing. Turn that into a lift.
Yeah.
So you build it all on the ground and try to stand it up.
I don't know. Those cranky things.
Look cranky things. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times too, if you have like a really tall, actually antenna, you would have to rent a lift, right, to be able to almost service it, essentially, as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of going into some of that a little bit. All right, the next little video I have here is actually going to be on doing the tower. So this would be if you were actually going to be shooting things off the side of your tower. So again, you can do this with a lift, and you'll see this on Saturday night. We're doing the exact same. We're doing something very similar to this on Saturday night, where we're actually shooting things off the side, going up to the lift. And then so Drew's going to take us here about some shortcuts on actually how to do that, and actually how to build a tower in Finale, and how to script that a little bit. So another short little video here for you guys to kind of go over that. I had Drew on some recordings, and I was going to let the expert go through this instead of me trying to fumble the way through on showing you guys how to do it. So this made it super easy.
So now say I want to build a tower where I'm shooting effects up the side of my tower. So what's the easy way to kind of accomplish that?
Yeah, so let's say the tower, the tower is the tower that's supporting the wheel. So we need something here that goes up to this height, about 45 meters. So the easiest way, I believe, there's multiple ways to make a tower, but one easy way that's good eye candy for video for recording here
Yeah.
is to build the tower on the ground and stand it up.
Yeah.
So we'll use these positions to do it. So Donnie, is it okay for 9? You tell me the number of positions you want on the side of the tower.
We got 45 meters. I mean, I could do 9 positions at 5 meters apart, I guess. Like that you would need 8 positions, I guess, for that.
Yeah, that's sort of just we got lucky, but so let's just go ahead and select these 9 positions, which you just did, and then come up here to we could do a range into a line, or we could do we've already got a line, so we could just do stretch line.
Okay.
In this case, stretch and compress are the same thing. So we know we want that to be, let's go with 45 meters, and let's see what we get here. So that's something like that.
Okay.
So think of this as your tower. Think of this as the left side of your tower, but it's laying on the ground right now.
Yeah.
And so you've built the tower and you just need to erect it so it's standing up. So you can select those positions, and you can you might, obviously, Donnie, I think you're probably not going to want your first position on the ground, because if we, then the rack's going to be right on the ground on the side of the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first thing we could do is we could raise these up a little bit. So right click on this and we'll use that move on axis tool and we'll just raise them up. So now we've got something like that. That's 14 feet. Go down a little bit. 10 feet. First one's 10 feet off the ground.
Perfect.
So then let's go ahead and select these guys, and then let's stand up our tower. So we've raised it off the ground, and let's stand it up. So we'll choose rotate. For rotating a position or positions, we're going to rotate all the selected positions. You can rotate around the up vector. The up vector is the direction that in effect shoots off the position without any angle. So
Okay.
that's straight up. Heading is, think of heading like a compass, which way the arrow points. Pitch, think of pitch as like flying a plane forward and back, and roll is left, right. So if we want to stand this thing up sideways, we want to roll all these positions. So if we do that and choose roll, now we've got this dial we can grab. If we keep the arrow in here, we're going, in larger increments. If we come out here, we've got 5-degree increments. If we come out here, we've got 1-degree increments, right? So that's what the dial is. What we really need is 90. So it's pretty easy in this case. So we'll just go over, snap it into 90. And there we go. Our tower looks like it's a little bit too tall because of the fact that we've got that first position off the ground, right? So multiple ways to fix that. I would probably do move on axis, and then if I could get to, it looks like it's a little bit, oh, there we go. I can get to that arrow there. You're gonna be like, Drew, I told you this was really hard. See? I can't quite get to it. We could probably do, let's try move on axis from a higher position. Yeah, that way it's not underground. And then I just got to get myself into a good spot where I can see the arrows there. Try that one more time. Every time you click away, there it is. So yeah, something like that. So now it's a function of being, of course I lowered that guy into the ground there. So we could also, I don't actually know what's going to happen when we do this, but I think if we do stretch, I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't put them flat again. I'm kind of hoping it keeps them vertical like this. Let's try it. So let's bring this out like 125 feet. We don't enter FT, we get meters.
Yep.
Yeah. So it scrunched them together. So that's good.
Nice.
So that's an important distinction. Like if you do a range into a line and we do 125 feet, not good.
Pops them back on the
Right?
ground.
You get a line on the ground along the left to right x-axis, right? So stretches them where they're at. I knew it did that on the ground. I didn't know if it would do that. Thankfully, it did. So there we go. So that's the left side of our tower. The problem we really have now is that it's not aligned with our wheel. So this is where using move on axis can help. Or we can go ahead and edit position properties. And since we have all 9 of these selected, we're changing the coordinates for all 9. So left and right, we know we want these kind of in the middle. Maybe let's put them 1 meter to the left, or -1 for left. And then we don't want to change that because undefined means these all have different y coordinates. If we put in one number here, they're all going to be at the same height. We want to leave that alone.
Yeah.
And this, I think this is the same roughly as where our wheel is. So there we go. And then we just hit that, and then it looks like our wheel actually ended up being further back. Let's just move the wheel forward to line up. So there we go.
There you
So
go.
now you've got the tower, and if we come in real close here, you'll see the wheels right there at the top.
Yep.
So that's the left side of the tower, and it's easy to it's easy to mix that up. And let me lock the position so we don't accidentally. Let me show you how you can tell. You want to know for sure if your tower is, the left side of the tower or the right side of the tower. Just select some positions. I'll just select them all. Position 9, and add an item. The stuff shot to the left, so it must be the left side of the tower, right?
Yeah.
Because the stuff's going to shoot off the positions based on their orientation. So we could, what I like to do now is a little trick where I duplicate these positions. So the wheel's kind of interfering with our ability to click on these easily, but I can shift click and drag these guys. There we go. I can get that one without getting the wheel. Got a lot of smoke going on here, though. Get the smoke out of there. Okay. In our last episode, we duplicated effects by holding the control key. You can duplicate positions by holding the control key too. So if I unlock my positions and I hold control and then click and drag, boom. There I've made, maybe the other side of my tower here without trying nearly as hard. Now, those positions are still shooting to the left. So what I need to do now is go into the properties, and here's where I've got those rolled. They're rolled 90. I just need to do the opposite, so minus 90.
Negative 90, okay.
And then boom, now those are to the right. So here's my shooting to the right off my tower, and you will want to make some position shortcuts. So this guy selects all the positions, but if I want to shoot from the right side of the tower, I probably want to make a position shortcut for those. So they're selected. I can just click the plus icon, and now I've got that position group shortcut that allows me to select the right side of the tower. Because it's a nightmare to have to select.
Label that, correct?
I'm sorry?
You can custom name that grouping.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Let me get the left side of the tower here. There we go. And then we'll do that. So yeah, absolutely. So we might do tower left and tower right. You're always going to get lowercase, and you're going to get the @ symbol. It's just how they work.
Yeah.
Now you got tower left and tower right. And of course you can rename these as well. So we could do, I've got them all selected on the right, so I can do rename, and maybe I'll just put TR and let Finale sort it out. There it is, TR1 through TR9.
Yeah.
And on the left, I'll go ahead and select all of them, rename tower left, and now they're all tower left 1 through 9. And they're not perfectly aligned, but you could tinker with it and you could get them lined up. And for the top here, I'll right click, because I want to make sure I'm only selecting the top one. Right click, rename, and then we'll call this wheel. And there you go. So now you've got tower left. Boom. Make it more interesting.
So there's a good example there for how to easily stand up a tower off the ground. That was kind of mind-blowing for me, because I had always thought about doing a completely different direction. I know David did it completely different for our show that we have this weekend, and then record this with Drew, and he was like, let's just stand him up like this, and we were mind-blown. Yeah, you would have to at this point. I mean, because each of those positions are far enough apart, you'd have to have a module basically in each position. And so at that point, you've got logistics of how do you attach your module, how are you attaching your pyro, and stuff like that to consider. I know that for the show that we have on Saturday, we have conduit for a ladder, we got pegboard, and all our single shots are zip tied on pegboard, and then the pegboard is attached to the conduit, and the modules are going to be attached up there as well. So.
And then on the wheel, is that you had how many? You had 24 that went around.
Yeah, 24 rails. Yeah.
So how many positions? How many did you have a module for each?
So well, and that.
Module or 2 modules? Or?
Yeah, so that really depends on, right now, on how many pyro, right? So on Saturday we have 2 360s, and so we have 4 72s up there that are running those wheels.
Okay.
So I'll show you a couple pictures of those here as well coming up. Yeah, good.
Are the videos available anywhere just for review later on?
Yeah, so we record these with Drew on our podcast. So if you follow our podcast, Pyro Podcast, These videos are actually coming up a little bit later in this season, so I would just, over the course of the next probably month or so, these videos will be available on our YouTube channel, which will have the full video. So I kind of clip these down a little bit, so keep a lookout on both of these videos. Will be popping up on our YouTube page probably in the course of the next month or so. All right, so the next piece of that is, so if you have, obviously if you have, I know some of this is probably a pro feature where you can do some of the custom rack layouts and stuff like this. I know that you can also import, like the Credco racks are already available in there for you to kind of use. And so when you're creating a 360, you really have to kind of set it up as kind of like a flat rack. And then you're going to kind of like roll it together, obviously, when you put it. So when you're designing it, you're like unrolling it and you're laying it out to design it. And so in Finale, when you do it, each row is considered like a slice of the wheel, if that kind of makes sense. So I have this one set up that says I can fit 7 shots basically on each rail around that wheel. You can certainly do a lot more. If you're doing 25 millimeter, 20 millimeter shots, you can get 12 or 15 of those probably on a rail. So I generally like some spacing, and if you've got enough wheels to kind of use, it space them out a little easier to work with. Especially if you use a lot of like 35, 40 millimeter stuff, it takes up more space. Then you're probably getting a max of 10. And then 24, that's obviously the number of rails in the circle is the 24. So you would adjust that if you have one that's 36 or 48, depending on how big your wheel is around. And then the angles then is actually the coordination of all of the angles around the wheel. So since mine are 15 degrees apart, each angle I put in the fan holder goes all the way, from the negative all the way to positive. So in this case, 180 can be positive or negative. So you can either preference it's straight down in this scenario, because zero is straight up on the wheel, 180 or negative 180 is straight down. And then if you have your racklets, this is where it actually shows it actually unrolled. So each one of those is a 360. And then you can see the negative angles on the left all the way to the positive angles on the right. The 2 white lines, and the white line in the middle, that's 0. And the one that's outside is going to be your straight down. And as you can see, that I had it set where there were 7 slices on each wheel essentially. And then in this case, you can see there is 16 different channels across these wheels. And so the way it designed it out, it required 3, but we took the other 3 and we just sandwiched them on because we had room to kind of be flexible. So we were able to do this with 2. We probably could have with probably 1.5 if we would have really sandwiched them, but we were going to use 2 anyway, so space them out a little bit. This is a pro feature in Finale, so. But all the other stuff in Finale is accessible, I believe, with the hobbyists for sure. So this is actually building a Pyro line with 360. This is actually what you will see on Saturday night. The right one here is kind of where we start out with just a blank slate, all of our stickers. As you kind of go through, you can see there, we have a Pyro llama the X holder in there, and then we zip tie the shots on there, slide them on. And then something that makes it really easy to do these is using slats. As you can see there on the end of the inboard, so from that far left one, we have a slat attached there. And then you can just plug them in directly to your slats, shun up your slats, so that way they're protected and all that kind of stuff for storage and transportation. Prepping these ahead of time is really the only way to do that. Trying to do this on site the day of a show is difficult to do. It takes a lot of man hours to go through all that. So we prep these ahead of time.
How many men you got?
Yeah. In this case here, both these wheels, it was just me and my wife. We prepped these together, and it took us a day and a half to do these 2 wheels, the 2 of us.
And you're still married?
Yeah. We still are, yeah. Yeah, she enjoys it. Any questions about this process? But yeah, in this case, you could use 18 slats, 36 slats, whatever fits on the side. In this instance, we used 36 slats, which are a little bit bigger. So I put, I think, 2 on each side of the wheel. I've used 18s and Skywars last year and put them all on one side. You just hook your slack cables up and you just run your slack cables in between one of your rows back to your back to the basket where you would have your modules. And another thing to consider when you do these is do your continuity check before you lift them up. So get them in place, do your continuity checks, make sure everything's good, and then raise it up because you don't want to be doing continuity check with it in the air and have to bring it down to fix something. So do all your continuity checks before you put them up.
So those are going to stand up, and they're shooting out in a circle around.
No, it's going to be, no, they're shooting this way.
So you're standing them up, they're going to be like this, just the way they are.
Just the way they are, just like that, yeah. Yeah.
They're sticking out from the.
Yeah, so as you'll see right there you go. That's, yeah. So this was our center position in Skywars 23. Yeah, so basically, so the next question is how do you mount it, right? How do you mount it to your bucket? How do you mount it to your tower? In this method here, we use the over-under method. So in the front, you're on top of the bar. In the back, you're below it. So it locks itself in place. And then on both the front and the back, we had tie down straps on there to also secure it in place to keep it from shifting left and right, as well to keep it stable. Surprisingly enough, a 4x4 does handle the weight of those. They're heavy, but they're not like extremely heavy because they are aluminum. Everything else is plastic on them.
How many total effects?
It can vary. I mean, you could easily get a couple hundred effects on each one. So I mean, you could very easily on 2 wheels get over 400 effects up there if you really pushed it. These two here probably a little over 300 probably for these two. Any questions about this process? Yeah, good.
How is you handling the wire management going through that? Are you going from the top to the middle?
Yeah, so basically, the way I do my wire management is I go by row, right? So I run all my E matches down the row and to the back, and then the same way with the slack cables. You hook the slack cables in, you just run them down between one of the rows back to your module. Yeah, because here's also you can see there where we even put tape around the E matches there to kind of keep them nice and clean. It's not as easy to troubleshoot, but it does keep your wire management a lot cleaner if you can kind of keep that stuff taped together and they.
Are you weighing these? You know what?
No. You just hope and pray that it doesn't weigh too much. The bucket limit was supposed to be 500. I don't think we pushed the weight of it. I mean, it didn't have any issues with that. So the empty pyro llamas themselves probably don't weigh more than 30 or 40 pounds by themselves. So, and a couple of hundred single shots on it aren't all that much.
Do you have another picture of how you attach the slats to the end of your 360?
No, I didn't have another one on here. No, I could probably find some, but yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times you get the slats and you'll get them where they have like the little backer on them that has the little screw holes, or something like that, where you can, the little 3D printed slat holders, and you just screw them on with some little wood screws into the wood plates, and it's definitely just enough room to be able to get your cables in there from not hitting the other slats.
Don't you have to use special cables too? I wanted to think that you had a special cable with a 90-degree angle.
On the modules usually have the 90-degree one, so you can put the boots on them. So you have the 90-degree comes off the mod. You can put the boot on top of them, or like in this case, we just had the big. We had the big boys on this and the big 72s.
What size signal shots are there on those wheels? They look bigger than 20.
Most of these were 35s. Most of these ranged between a 30 and 35. I think the Night Owls were all 30s. We had a few 35s on there, but not a lot.
And how high?
This one was at 85.
Were you shooting 35s downward also? With
Yeah, we were shooting 35s downwards as well. Yeah.
They hit the ground.
Yes, they did hit the ground. Yes. Yes, I have a little video here that will show you this exact one being used. It's a short little clip. So there's an idea right there on how to really effectively use 3D, where you shot the two outsides by themselves, and then you shot the middle one by themselves. If you watch the video, you could actually see the mines from the outside hitting the one in the middle, because they were right in line with each other. Play it again.
Oh, yeah, there.
Yep.
What was your spacing between the towers there?
They were, I think they were 150 feet apart. We had the middle one, then we went 150 and then 150, yeah. Oh, we see, you can watch it again, I guess. You do. Play the whole video. All right, and that, huh? It's on YouTube. If you look up Boom Chick on YouTube, Boom Chick, yep, it's the Sky Wars 2023. Or if you search Donnie Tom Sky Wars 2023 on YouTube, you will find the whole show. And there's a lot of wheel work throughout that show. Yeah, good. That whole show, we were at about 4,900 cues, and then a total of like 5,000 effects. We had a few things series. Any other questions? Yeah, good.
You might mention real quick, since the drums are done, just to notes on transport, as far as like making sure you have space and your like, you gotta build these transport that way. So I think it's worth mentioning your transport on that. So when we built those for Sky Wars and transport, then we built a special device that would hold all four of them in a trailer. We built a big square platform, built a post in the middle, and then built out a beam in the middle, and we would slide them on and then put supports on the end of the beams, that way that they didn't sag. It kept them from bouncing and very sturdy. They survived a 3.5-hour trip to Sky Wars, and continuity left good and continuity arrived good. So you have to take that into consideration if you're prepping ahead of time and transporting, is that you do have your solid transportation structure and a method to transport it, other than just sitting in the back of your truck and hoping you arrive and it's all in one piece.
I wonder if they use like a motor lift, like what people use and what mechanics use to lift engines.
No, well, yeah. So when we built it, we used an engine hoist initially to build it. They had the little post in the middle, and so the engine hoist fit perfectly in the square of the 360, and then we could slowly rotate it as we worked on it. That was a good way, so that way you didn't have to try to work from the bottom up. You would just rotate it. In this instance here, we just rotated the 4x4 post on the four sides, so that way we were always working on the top of it and just rolled it over as we made progress. But again, you will see this out in the field on Saturday. If you come out Saturday morning, you might get a glimpse of it before it goes up. So if you want to come out on Saturday and actually see it and see the building of the tower and stuff like that, we'll be doing that there at the fairgrounds on Saturday morning. Other than that, you will see it in action on Saturday night. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out, and